On a quiet green planet far from the main trade routes, there was a small alien village named Velra. The people there, known as the Alari, lived simple lives. They had blue skin, soft eyes, and long fingers, perfect for farming and weaving. They grew their own food, sang songs under the twin moons, and lived peacefully for many generations. But something began to go wrong first. The river that flowed through their land began to dry up. Then the sky changed color, and strange winds started to blow across the valley. Crops began to die, and the water that was left turned cloudy and bitter. The energy crystals they used for light and heat started to fade. One by one, their machines stopped working. No messages came from the big cities. No help arrived. The Alari elders said it was the curse of silence, a time when the world stops listening. Some villagers began to believe that they had been forgotten by the galaxy. Lyra, a young Alari girl, refused to believe that. She was curious and brave. While others stayed in the village, she often climbed the hills to watch the stars and listen to the wind. She wanted to find a way to help her people, even if she didn't know how. One morning, Lyra saw something strange in the sky. It looked like a falling star, but it left smoke behind. It crashed into the far side of the mountain. Just beyond the forest, without waiting, Lyra grabbed her satchel and ran. She climbed over rocks, ducked under twisted branches, and followed the smoke. After hours of walking, she found it. A small escape pod lay half buried in the dirt, broken and steaming. The hatch was open, and inside was a human boy. He was thin, covered in dirt, and unconscious. His clothes were torn, and his hands were scraped. Lyra had never seen a human in real life. Only stories told of them strange, clever creatures from a dangerous world called Earth. But Lyra didn't see danger. She saw someone who needed help. She dragged him out of the pod and gave him water from her pouch. The boy slowly opened his eyes and looked at her, said one word weakly, "Thanks." His name was Nate. L-I-R. I brought him back to the village. The elders were unsure. Some were afraid. They said he could bring more trouble. But others saw the way Lyra stood beside him, her eyes full of hope. They agreed to let him stay for a few days. Nate didn't talk much. He spent his time watching the broken machines, looking at the sick crops, and walking near the dried riverbed. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for much, just looked and listened. One evening, Lyra found Nate standing near the village's old junk pile. It was filled with broken tools, shattered drones, empty crystal batteries, rusted parts, everything the villagers had thrown away over the years. Nate was smiling. "You smile?" Lyra asked. "This," Nate said, pointing at the junk. "This is gold." Lyra was confused. "It's trash, not to me," Nate replied. "On Earth I fix things, old things. My mom used to call me the junk genius." The next morning, Nate got to work. He dragged broken panels, twisted wires, and old parts into the center of the village. I sat down with a toolkit he had salvaged from the pod and began working. He didn't ask for help. He just started building something. Villagers gathered to watch. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. But Lyra sat beside him, handing him tools, asking questions. By sunset, Nate had built a simple water filter using parts of an old fan, a cracked crystal container, and some tubing from a broken irrigation system. He poured the cloudy river water into the top. Clean, cool water flowed out of the bottom. The villagers stared in shock. A few walked forward and tasted the water. It was real. It was pure. The elders called a meeting that night. They discussed Nate. Was he a gift from the stars? Was this just luck? "He is not like us," one elder said. "But he helped us," another replied. "And he did it with things we threw away." They agreed to let Nate stay longer. Over the next few days, Nate kept building, repaired a small generator using leftover wires and solar panels. The village square lit up at night for the first time in months. Children laughed and danced in the light. The dark fear that had been growing in everyone's hearts began to shrink. Nate still spoke little, but his actions spoke louder than any words. Lyra asked him one night, "Why are you helping us?" Nate looked at her and said, "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. and because I can. For the first time in a long while, the villagers began to believe again. They didn't know where Nate had come from or how long he would stay. But in just a few days, he had changed their world. From the trash they had forgotten, Nate had created hope. And deep inside his mind, Nate was already thinking of what he would build next. Nate woke up early the next morning, even before the twin suns had fully risen. While the village was still quiet, he walked toward the junk pile again. His eyes scanned the broken shapes of old machines, dusty metal sheets, and tangled wires. What others saw as useless, Nate saw as parts waiting for a second life. Leary joined him soon after, holding 2 small pieces of fruit and handing one to him. "What are you going to make today?" she asked, sitting on a large rusted shell of a farming drone. "Something to help keep the lights on," Nate said, chewing slowly. "That little generator I fixed won't last long. I need to make a stronger one." "But we don't have new energy crystals," Leary reminded him. "We don't need new," Nate said, smiling. "We just need smart." He pointed at the old solar panels, cracked, but still mostly whole. Some had been thrown away because they didn't shine the same anymore. Others were bent. But to Nate, they were just puzzles. As the villagers began to move around the village, they noticed Nate and Leary building something. Nate used wooden beams to make a frame, fixed the panels with melted glass from broken windows, and connected them with copper wires from old lanterns. Leary helped tighten screws and pass tools to him. By midday, he had a new solar panel system set up. It didn't look perfect, but it worked. Energy began to flow into the small battery box Nate had repaired. The lights that night were brighter. Even the heaters came to life, spreading soft warmth through the cold wind. The villagers whispered among themselves. The human boy was not just lucky, he was skilled. Children followed him with wide eyes. Elders watched from a distance but said nothing. Over the next few days, Nate didn't stop. He walked through every part of the village, asking quiet questions. He looked at every broken system. He checked the wind towers that hadn't turned in years. He inspected old weather sensors near the edge of the valley, asked for maps, drawings, anything that showed what the village once used to survive. He found something strange, records of wind patterns that had changed. Air that once flowed gently now came in sudden, harmful waves. It carried dust, sickness, and made breathing harder, especially for the elders. Nate sat alone that night, drawing in the dirt with a metal rod. Leary sat beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "The air is killing your village," he said. "Not fast, but slowly. The wind is wrong. I think I can fix that too." "How?" Leary asked, eyes wide. "I'm going to build a wind purifier," Nate said. "A big one." The next morning, Nate began collecting parts. He found large fan blades from an old crashed shuttle. He used rusted filters from a mining mask, long metal tubes from water pipes, and the core from a broken farming drone. Heavy work, but Nate didn't complain. Villagers began helping, curious now. They didn't fully understand, but they carried parts for him, cleaned pieces, and watched him closely. One of the elders, a quiet one named Toril, finally approached. "What are you doing, human?" Nate wiped his forehead. "Building something to clean your air." "From this?" Toril asked, looking at the mess. "Yes," Nate said simply. "Give me a few days." The purifier was tall and strange-looking. It stood like a tower, with wide fan blades at the top and filters stacked around its base. It made soft noises, buzzing, humming, and clicks. Nate explained how the air would pass through the filters and come out cleaner. Not perfect, but safer. "But it won't work unless we anchor it high on the rocks," he told Leary. "It needs wind." They chose a tall cliff just behind the village. Moving the parts up there wasn't easy. Tied ropes, built ramps, and worked together. Even the children helped carry smaller tools as they worked. Nate taught them. Showed them how to twist wires together, how to spot cracks, how to test circuits. His hands moved quickly, but he always explained in calm, simple words. The purifier was nearly ready when dark clouds began to gather. "A storm is coming," Toril warned. "A big one." "We're almost done," Nate said. "We need one more day." Storm's here? Don't wait, Toril replied, walking away. That night, as thunder echoed in the sky, Nate stood alone near the base of the cliff, watching the wind spin the unfinished purifier. Leary came up to him, holding a metal shield. "You're not going to stop, are you?" she asked. "No," he said. "This needs to work. It might be the only way to save everyone." "Then I'll help," she said. When the storm hit, it came with powerful winds and sharp rain. Lightning cracked across the sky. Most villagers stayed in their homes, but on the cliff, two figures worked in the wind. They held metal plates, tightened bolts, and shielded the machine with their bodies. Parts shook, bolts rattled, but the purifier stood tall. As dawn broke, the storm faded. The purifier began to spin slowly. Lights blinked. Soft air flowed out of its vents. The wind had changed. Nate collapsed in the mud, breathing hard. Leary caught him before he fell. She smiled through the rain. In the village below, Toril watched the clouds begin to clear. The strange noise of the purifier echoed across the valley. "Maybe," Toril whispered. "This boy is the answer we never knew we needed." The villagers gathered again, this time not to question Nate, but to protect the machine he had built. And somewhere inside the human boy's tired heart, a spark burned brighter than ever before. The storm was gone, and the sky looked soft again. The twin suns rose slowly, sending golden light over the wet valley. The village of Velra had survived the night. More than that, it had changed. The air smelled cleaner, softer. People stepped out of their homes and looked around, their eyes wide with wonder. It had been a long time since they felt hope in the morning wind. Nate sat on a rock near the purifier, rubbing his arms and yawning. Leary handed him a warm drink made from boiled roots. He took a sip and smiled weakly. "It works," he said. "Lir." I nodded. "They are starting to believe." The purifier spun gently above them, its filters glowing faintly with trapped dust. Nate checked its wiring again, then looked across the valley. "But this isn't the end," he said. "We need more. More power, more clean systems. This is just the beginning." Nate walked back to the junk pile that afternoon, crouched next to a half-broken data screen, its surface cracked. Wires sticking out like a nest, tapped it with his knuckles and whispered, "You're coming back to life." Leary and a few curious kids watched him work. Nate took apart the screen, then used its parts to repair a village sensor that hadn't worked in years. Beeped for the first time, showing the wind speed and air temperature. "See?" pointing. "If we know the weather early, we can stay safe." One of the children asked, "How do you know all this?" Nate looked up and said quietly, "Because I used to fix things back home. Not big things, just junk. Old radios, fans, broken toys. But my mom always said, if you know how things break, you know how to put them back together." He paused and looked into the distance. "I just never thought I'd be fixing a whole village." The villagers slowly started helping. They brought old broken items from their homes and asked Nate if anything could be saved. He never said no. Sometimes the work was slow. Sometimes it failed. But he kept trying. Nate showed the villagers how to clean crystal batteries, how to test wires without burning them, and how to twist metal strips into strong frames. The kids began building small things on their own teeny lanterns. Fans, even a toy that could move with the wind. One evening, Toril came to see Nate. The old Ellery elder stood tall, holding a box in his long fingers. "This was from our central unit," Toril said. "Long dead. We believed it beyond repair." Nate opened the box and found a power core, dry and cracked. He stared at it for a while, then nodded. "I think I can fix it." It took 2 days and a few burns on his fingers, but Nate did it. The core lit up slowly, a soft blue light pulsing from inside. When he returned it to Toril, the elder smiled for the first time. "You are more than just a visitor," Toril said. "You are part of this place now." Meanwhile, the purifier on the cliff worked day and night. Clean air moved across the valley. Elders stopped coughing. Babies began to sleep better. Every night the lights came on without fear. But Nate knew the biggest danger wasn't just the bad air. It was that the village was alone. It's completely cut off. "We need communication," Nate said one night. He's looking at Leary. "But the tower broke years ago," she replied. "And the crystals that powered it were stolen in a raid." "Then we make our own signal," Nate said. He climbed the old signal tower with ropes and a harness made from seat belts. He carried a backpack full of parts, radios, circuit boards, antennas from drones. He worked from dawn to dusk. Birds circled him, and wind tried to pull him down, but Nate held on. Finally, on the 5th day, he pressed a button. The tower blinked. A small screen on the ground lit up, "signal sent." It said. Nate laughed out loud. "We did it." A few villagers clapped. Others still didn't understand. Leary asked, "What did you say in the message?" "Simple," Nate answered. "This village is alive. We need help." They didn't expect an answer soon. But the signal kept going, repeating every few hours. It was their voice now, call to the stars. While they waited, Nate began building something else. A windmill-powered water pump, made from fan blades, pipes, and the base of a broken robot.
Ow!
It pulled water from deep under the ground and sent it to every home in the village. People no longer had to walk far with heavy jars. They could wash, cook, and drink freely. The kids named the pump Nate's Fountain. Nate smiled when he heard that. They could have picked a cooler name, he joked. "Lear," I just laughed. "You're becoming a legend. I'm just a kid." "Who plays with trash?" Nate replied. But the truth was clear. The human boy had brought the village back to life, not with money or power, but with tools, effort, and the memory of how to rebuild. One night, as the stars filled the sky, Toril spoke in front of the whole village. "We were once silent, forgotten," he said, "but the human child reminded us that even the smallest light can shine in the darkest place." Nate didn't say anything, just looked up at the stars, hoping someone out there had heard his message. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, a blinking signal moved from satellite to satellite, heading toward Earth. 3 days passed after the signal was sent into space. Each morning, Nate climbed the tower to check the screen, hoping for a reply. Each morning it only said the same words, "Signal active." No response. Still, Nate didn't give up. "Someone will hear us," he told Leary, while tightening bolts on the water pump. "Someone always listens. It just takes time." Leary smiled at him. "And if no one hears, then we build more," Nate said. But the sky was changing again. Villagers looked at the clouds and whispered to one another. Even the animals began to act strange. Moving lower into the forest and hiding under trees, Tora stood outside his home and watched the wind. "A heavy storm is coming," he said. "Worse than before?" When Nate heard that, he looked up at the purifier on the cliff. "We need to protect it," he said. "If the purifier breaks, all this, it goes back to how it was." Toril nodded. "Then we must prepare." But the purifier was tall and wide. It was not easy to move or shield. Nate ran around gathering metal sheets, broken shields from old machines, ropes, and wooden planks. He asked for help from the villagers. Some agreed right away. Others were scared. "It's too dangerous," one said. "We should stay inside and pray." "What if the purifier can't be saved?" asked another. Nate looked at them with tired but determined eyes. "What if it can?" Leary stood beside him. He didn't stop when we laughed at him. He didn't stop when the wind cut his hands. "Why stop now?" That silence was the answer. Dozens of villagers joined them. Together they carried metal up the path toward the cliff. They built a barrier around the purifier, using broken doors, old armor plates, and even large rocks to hold it down. The sky turned darker with each passing hour. Wind howled through the valley, and rain began to fall. Hard and fast by nightfall, the storm had arrived. It was worse than anyone expected. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder so loud it shook the ground. Trees bent under the wind. Roofs shook. But on the cliff, the purifier stood shaking, humming, but still working. Nate was up there, tying ropes tighter. Rain hit his face like small stones. His arms ached, his back hurt, but he kept moving. "You need to rest," Leary shouted, trying to hold down a metal plate. I can't, Nate shouted back. If we stop now, everything breaks. A loud crack rang out. A part of the support beam snapped. The purifier leaned to the side. Villagers below gasped. Nate rushed forward and pressed his back against the base of the purifier. He pushed with all his strength while Leary tied a new support line. The villagers below started climbing. They came up with new ropes, beams, and support pieces. They didn't want to lose what Nate had built. Together, they worked like a living machine. The purifier stood firm. By morning, the storm had passed. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Villagers stepped out of their homes to see the damage. Trees had fallen. Parts of the fence were gone. Some roofs had holes. But the most important thing was still standing on the cliff. The purifier spun slowly, still cleaning the air. A cheer rose from the valley. Some villagers cried. Others fell to their knees. They had survived again. Nate sat near the purifier. Soaked and exhausted, his fingers were cut. His legs were covered in mud. But his eyes were full of calm. Thord climbed up the cliff. They stood in silence, looking at the boy in the machine behind him. You should not have been the one to protect us, Toril said softly. I chose to, Nate replied. Because this is my home now, too. The elders looked at one another. Then Toril reached into his robe and pulled out a small cloth. Inside was a metal pin shaped like a sun and moon joined together. He placed it in Nate's hand. This is our mark of honor, Toril said. It belongs to those who bring light to the dark. Nate held the pin tightly. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. That night, a feast was held with. Fewer supplies, the villagers shared what they had. They sang songs for the first time in many weeks. Children danced under the light. The wind was soft. The air was clean, and then a sound came from the signal tower. Ping. Nate's eyes opened, wide. He ran toward the screen, blinked, and new words appeared. Message received. Villagers gathered behind him. Leary grabbed his arm. What does it say? Nate pressed the button. A voice played broken. But clear enough. This is Earth Colony Ship Beacon 5. We received your signal. Aid, ship, en route. Hold position. Help is coming. The village fell silent. Then came the cheers, louder than before. The sound of real hope. Nate turned toward the crowd, smiling. We did it. But inside, he knew what was coming next. When the human ship arrived, he would have to choose go back to his people or stay here, where he had made a new life. He looked at Leary, the children, at the machines built from scraps. Deep in his heart, he already knew the answer. The next morning was calm. The sky was blue, the wind was soft, and the valley was full of quiet joy. Birds sang again in the trees. Flowers that had not bloomed for weeks opened in the clean air. It felt like the planet was finally breathing. Again, Nate stood at the edge of the village, looking at the signal tower. It still blinked with light, proof that someone had heard them. Someone from Earth. Someone had listened. The message repeated every hour. Aid ship en route. Hold position. Help is coming. Nate should have been excited. But his heart felt heavy. He walked through the village and saw things he had helped build: clean water flowing through pipes, lights glowing from repaired solar panels, the purifier humming far above on the cliff. He saw villagers smiling and laughing again. He saw children playing with small machines they had built using his simple instructions. They called him the Fixer, the Builder. Some even called him Hopebringer. But now someone else was coming, someone stronger, someone official. Nate wondered what would happen to this village when the aid ship arrived. Would they take over? Would they replace his machines? Would they take him back? He didn't know. And the thought made his chest feel tight. Leary noticed it. She always did. You're quiet today, she said, handing him a small wooden cup of warm berry juice. Nate took a sip. Just thinking about going home, she asked softly. He nodded slowly. I don't even know if my home still exists. My escape pod broke off during an attack. The ship I was on, it was in trouble. I don't know if anyone else survived. Leary sat beside him. But now, a human ship is coming. But it doesn't feel like the home I remember anymore. He looked around the village. This feels more like home now. Leary smiled. Then stay. Nate chuckled. You say it like it's easy. It is, she said. You already belong here. That night, the villagers held another gathering. This one wasn't about storms or machines. It was about the future. Tora stood in the center, his voice clear and calm. We were once lost, he said, but a single boy found us again. Not with weapons, not with orders, but with his hands, his heart, and broken things we had forgotten. We don't know what tomorrow brings, but today we thank the one who reminded us how to live. The crowd turned toward Nate. He stood slowly, unsure of what to say. He cleared his throat. I didn't plan any of this, he said. I just saw problems and tried to fix them. I never thought I'd become part of something so alive. He looked at Leary, then at the smiling faces around him. If they let me choose, he said, I want to stay. Cheers broke out. Villagers clapped. Some hugged each other. A few wiped tears from their eyes. Toril stepped forward and placed a hand on Nate's shoulder. Then we will call you one of our own. The next few days passed quickly. The aid ship was getting closer. The signal tower picked up its speed and distance. It would arrive in 2 sunrises. Nate used the time to teach the villagers more. He gave them simple guides how to fix power lines, how to clean solar panels, how to make basic filters and fans. He drew pictures, wrote instructions, and used small models to explain things. You won't always need me, he said, handing a toolkit to one of the older kids. You can do this on your own? The villagers didn't want to let him go, but they understood. Even if he stayed, they needed to learn how to build without him. One child, a small boy with silver eyes, held up a tiny wind-powered toy he had made. Look, he said proudly. Nice. Built it with old wires like you showed. Nate smiled. You're already better than me. The village was stronger now. Cleaner air, safe water, working lights, and people who believed in themselves again. Nate had not just repaired machines. He had helped repair their hope. On the night before the ship arrived, Nate stood alone near the purifier. The stars were bright. He stared up at them, wondering who was inside the ship, what they would say when they saw the village. Would they understand what had happened here? Would they respect it? Footsteps approached. Leary joined him. Tomorrow, she said. Yeah, Nate replied. Are you scared a little? She said. But not about the ship. I'm scared they might take you away. Me too, he whispered. They stood in silence for a while. Then Leary spoke again. No matter what they say. Remember, this is your home too. Nate looked at her. I won't forget. In the early morning light, before the suns had fully risen, a bright line appeared in the sky. It grew larger and brighter as it came closer. The aid ship had arrived. Villagers gathered at the edge of the valley, eyes wide, hands held tight. Some had never seen a human ship before. The ship slowed, hovered above the field, then landed gently. Its doors opened. Figures stepped out, humans in clean suits with kind eyes. One of them stepped forward and spoke. We received your signal. We're here to help. Nate stepped forward slowly. The woman looked at him with surprise. You're the one who sent the message? Yes, he said. But I don't want to leave. She looked around the village, the machines, the people, the smiling faces. We won't take anything away, she said. We came to support, not replace. Nate nodded. Then let's work together. And in that moment, a human boy and an alien village stood as one, connected not by power, but by purpose. The Earth's aid team moved slowly and carefully through the village of Velra. They didn't carry weapons or speak in loud voices. They smiled, asked questions, and took notes. They listened to the villagers. They walked past the machines Nate had built and touched them with gentle hands. You did all this? One of them asked Nate, pointing to the solar network. Nate nodded. With their help. The team leader, Captain Renee, looked amazed. You used trash, broken parts, old tech. This is brilliant. Nate shrugged. I just fixed what I could." The villagers watched everything with curious eyes. Leary stayed close to Nate, her arms crossed and her expression calm but protective. She trusted the visitors only because Nate said they were safe. Captain Renee sat with Toril and the elders, listening to their story. She learned about the poison wind, the broken machines, the lost hope. Then they told her about the crash how. "One human boy came out of the sky and changed everything. He made us believe again," Toril said. "We were sinking, but he pulled us up." Captain Renee looked at Nate. "We'd be proud to take you back to Earth." Nate didn't answer right away. He walked around the village that evening thinking. He touched the water pump that now gave clean water to every home. He looked at the children running with toy gliders they had built. He saw the purifier standing strong on the cliff, its lights blinking softly as it worked. This wasn't just a place he helped. It had become his place. That night he sat with Leary under the starlight. "They want me to return," he said. "Leary, look down. Will you go?"
"Don't think I belong there anymore,"
he whispered. "Your people are waiting," she said. "Maybe your family." Nate shook his head. "Maybe, or maybe they're gone. I don't know. But here, I know what I've built. What I've become. Back on Earth, I was just a kid who fixed things in the garage. Here, I made a difference." Leary said nothing, but she placed her hand beside his. The next morning, the villagers gathered in the main square. Captain Renee stood beside Nate and addressed everyone. "We brought supplies, medical tools, clean food, batteries, and seed packs," she said. "We'll also send a message to the main Galactic Council. Your village will no longer be forgotten." "No. Cheers." Rose from the crowd, "And we would like to take Nate home," she added. The crowd went quiet. Nate stepped forward and cleared his throat. "I have something to say." He looked at everyone, the old, the young, the friends he had made, the machines they had built together. "I came here by accident," he said. "I was scared, lost, and alone. You gave me shelter. You trusted me, and together, we made something better." He turned to Captain Renee. "Thank you for coming, really. But this is my home now. I want to stay." The villagers burst into cheers. Children jumped with joy. Toril smiled and placed his hand over his chest in respect. Captain Renee nodded with understanding. "Then we'll support you from here. You'll be our link, a bridge between humans and Alari." Nate smiled. "That sounds good." Over the next week, the aid team helped expand the village. They repaired old structures, installed stronger communication links, and updated the purifier systems. Nate helped every step of the way, explaining how the machines worked and how the villagers had helped build them. The Earth team took pictures of Nate fixing machines, of Leary showing new tools to the children, of the smiling villagers. Wanted to share the story with the world? Before the ship left, Captain Renee handed Nate a small box. "This is a beacon," she said. "Press the button if you ever need us again." Nate accepted it, but said, "I hope we never have to use it." As the aid ship lifted off and disappeared into the sky, the villagers waved and cheered. Nate stood beside Leary, watching the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Not for a second," he said. Months passed, then seasons. The village of Velra changed. New crops grew in the fields. More water pumps were added, children learned, to build from parts instead of throwing them away. Villagers shared their knowledge with other nearby tribes. Some even traveled to learn from Nate and Lair. Nate helped build a learning center. It wasn't big, but it had tools, guides, and working machines. He called it the repair house. He became a teacher, a builder, and a friend. Not just to the Alari, but to others who came from far away, wanting to learn the same way. Lara stayed by his side, leading with wisdom and heart. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Toril sat with Nate near the cliff. "We used to wait for others to save us," the elder said. "You showed us that sometimes the help we need is already here." Nate looked at the machines glowing in the valley. "Just needed to believe again." Toril smiled. "You're the boy who saved a world, with broken parts and a whole heart. And as night fell over Velra, the wind was clean, the lights were warm, and hope lived in every wire, every child. Every breath a human boy had come from the sky. He had stayed. He had built something that would never be forgotten.